Welcome to Unpolished Stories, our version of speaking beyond the spotlight. Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Celina Peerman, and it has been a pleasure on behalf of Virtual Speakers Association International to go literally globally to find people who can share some insights from their experience and lessons learned on the stage and off. With me again, Chantelle, here we are back for another episode. As co-hosts, it has certainly been an adventure to have all of these conversations.
Adventure is absolutely the right word, Celina. And you know what? I think we're in for a little bit more adventure with our globetrotting guests today. So I'm super looking forward to seeing how this episode is going to be playing out. But as always, what do we always say? We are speakers first, humans first, speakers second. Why do I
Nice
use this?
illustration of that human part right there, right? That's what we do.
Back up there. As we always say, we are humans first and speakers second. And that's what I love about these shows and just capturing that human element.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we should begin this adventure and not wait any longer. Why don't you kick us off?
Absolutely. So, with us today, we have Ingrid Lotze and Gavin Moffat, a dynamic wife and husband duo, TEDx speakers, scuba divers, and communication professionals. In 2022, they embraced a nomadic lifestyle, traveling to 30 cities across 12 countries with only 7 t-shirts each. Their journey highlights intentional living, cultural immersion, balancing work and life remotely. As keynote speakers and advocates for empowerment, they share stories of resilience and adaptability, encouraging others to prioritize experiences over possessions. Ingrid is a former chairperson of Women for Africa, and Gavin is the author of Swimming with Sharks, Simple Business Guidelines for a Complex World. Gavin and Ingrid, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful to be here.
Always love hearing the introduction that gets read. And it's so interesting to stand and try not to feel awkward and be awkward and look awkward. And I mean, even though we know it, we've lived it, it's still awkward.
You know, you raise such an interesting point, and I'm always going to lead in with this. As speakers, we know we all write our own MC intros, right? But then we're supposed to go, oh, thank you for that lovely introduction.
And even that would be awkward.
I love it. But you know what? I'm going to lead in with I think I'm going to start off with this nomadic lifestyle of yours. You know, I became a nomad about 7 years ago, and I'm quite interested in hearing other nomad stories. I call myself a slow mad, so I ain't got nothing on your 30 countries, right? I really go slow. I'm like a sloth. But talk to us about how you balance work and life and family and speaking, and with only 7 t-shirts. Just give us a bit of an intro.
Well, that's such a broad question, and actually the 25 minutes would be covered completely by that. I think the thing is that we've always been adventurous. Yeah. We've always had some degree of adaptability, some degree of resilience. So while it's a massive change having gone from where we lived, the way we lived in a house with, you know, a roof, of walls, and our own set of keys, it's really not that different in that we are just facing different challenges, new ideas, and we're just being adaptable and just being resilient. And yes, it's different waking up and looking out of the window and we're in Phuket instead of Johannesburg, South Africa. It's part of the way we live and the way we think to enjoy that adaptability and that change and that difference. And I think if you asked our kids, they'd go, yeah, it's a bit surprising, but actually it's not totally surprising that they are living like this, because that's kind of what I would have expected from my parents.
Pretty much, yes.
And I love what you say about you're walking the talk. You know, you talk about resilience, but you're actually living that through your lived experience. And I think that's so important for us as speakers.
I think there was also a trigger in terms of we've always been interested in learning something new. So being in the communications game, nothing is ever the same. And we have gone through 2 decades in the business of things changing, like
2 decades.
3 decades.
3 decades.
There's fax machines now. Oh, there's email now. There's AI. There's always something new. And so we've always been interested in learning. And now it's a different level of learning. So now it's learning about new cultures, new ways of thinking, new ways of driving on the road. And all of those things bring this delight to our lives every day.
I would ask then, you bring up communication, and both of you have extensive experience in communication and strategy. Could you each share a personal moment when you realized how important that power of communication was in shaping your professional journey?
Should I go first?
Yeah.
I think that I've always known the power of communications from a very early age, but I think the one story that is pivotal, that was really like a wow moment for me, was we were teaching interpersonal skills in a corporate, and we were teaching specific skills, so how to have courageous conversations. Not only you must have them, but how to have them. And this woman came up to us afterwards and she said, that changed my life, because I spoke to my boss and I told him that I want to be a forklift driver and that it wasn't fair that only men could be forklift drivers. And what happened subsequent to that is they had their first woman forklift driver. Their policies changed and there were more that followed. And I get goosies when I tell the story, because the power of just one courageous conversation changed an entire system around what women could do in the organization.
From my perspective, I've always understood how important communication is, but only in retrospect have I been able to go back and identify the point at which I went, communication is amazing. When I was in Standard 5, so 12, 13 years old, at the school we were at, every person leaving the school had to give a speech to the entire school. So in this big hall, here's this 12, 13-year-old having to give a speech. I gave what I'm sure was an average speech, but I was animated, enjoyed the topic, was enthusiastic, and I literally had a standing ovation from all of these kids loving what I did. And I remember going, this is so cool. I dig this. So that memory disappeared and only came back later. But that was kind of, I've always understood the power of being able to communicate well. But I think one of the cornerstones for me in terms of understanding how well I understand the necessity and the strength of good communication was we had a client many years ago, 2003, called CS Holdings. They were listed on the JSE. There was a set of financials coming out. We said to them, you're underestimating the blowback you're going to get on these financials. They are not great. You need to think very carefully about how you handle this. They disregarded our advice. They went ahead and did an interview, which we told them they shouldn't. The CEO made a massive mistake and did one of those things that journalists are so good at, where he tricked her into saying a little bit of something in the car park after the interview. The thing blew up. The company was delisted. She resigned. People lost jobs. And it was all because of those two things. One was, you don't understand how important this thing is, and don't do that interview. It's going to backfire on you. And those moments, it was two things. One is miscommunication and how badly it can backfire. And the second part was, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm talking about. And I want to work with people who listen to me, because I don't want these kind of repercussions and impacts and side effects of advice that isn't listened to. So comms, so important when done properly, and probably even more important when not done properly.
Absolutely. I love that story. And I remember the CS Holdings debacle many, many years ago, back in the years when I lived in Johannesburg too. So interesting to see this full circle. And now see the role that you had in that. But what I'm also picking up between the lines is, and I'm going to pick this up, I said you walk your talk. As this husband duo that you are, you model what you're talking. And I'm seeing the communication between the two of you as a model that you're taking to the world, and the challenges and the resiliences, and I love that. But we all know there's the behind the scenes stuff. Never, right? So would you share with us one of your unpolished stories from behind the scenes? Maybe a disaster, something that didn't go quite according to plan. It could be a communication story, a speaking story, could be an interpersonal story between the two of you, and how this has shaped your journey going forward.
I'm not going to talk about an interpersonal story because, yes, Gavin can do that. I think the unpolished story for me that actually keeps coming up, which is so interesting, is my second TEDx talk. I speak about my first marriage and being in married to an abusive alcoholic. And the TEDx talk is around how we can all make a difference with gender-based violence. And in that, I speak about the cycle of violence and breaking that cycle of violence. And I mention my son. Now, I've spoken and I've told the story many times, also in women's work, etc., etc. But it keeps coming up where it just smacks me on the back of my head and the tears start rolling, and I can't finish the sentence when I mention the impact of GBV on young people. And it's just, now I've learned that if it's going to come, I don't want it to push it, but if it's going to come, then I'm going to stand with that and be okay in that and let the tears roll and genuinely then carry on with what I need to say. But yeah, every time it comes, I'm like, oh, well, there it is again.
It's interesting that previously Ingrid would try and cover that up.
Yeah.
She would try and be professional over that because that's a sign of weakness. But very quickly she learned that that was an integral part of the story.
And it's authentic, right?
And what you don't want is a stage authenticity, but that piece of authenticity brings the audience to tears all on their own, and it's not staged. It's a genuine thing happening for it. It's amazing to watch. I saw that at the end of last year at a talk, and it was quite something.
Not to happen, because it does imbalance me a little bit, but yeah.
I had an enjoyable experience for the PSASA, so the PSA Southern Africa, for the 2021 convention. I was one of the MCs, and I had to introduce a gent who was coming live streaming via from Germany, I think, and he wasn't there. And of course, we were live streaming, people in the room, and he just wasn't there. So pad, like any good MC, you have to pad. And I have no idea how long this is going to be going on for. Ended up as 15 minutes. You try and fill 15 minutes with, luckily I had just a day before gone, what would happen if? And I'd written down some stories and some thoughts and whatever. So out came my passions, which was actually one of my passions is music. So it told a story about a song called Despacito, which had been a minor little hit until Justin Bieber dropped some vocals on top, and it became a 12 million selling song, 1 billion streams on YouTube, etc., etc. And that was just a way of covering up what could have been an appalling gap of embarrassment for everyone, not just me. So it's not just about, yes, I am up there, but I'm there to do a job, and my job is to make sure that the whole event is professional and well run. And so, yeah, I was really lucky that I had 3 good stories that I could just whip out. That were engaging with the audience, so everybody else could hear the laughter. But that was definitely a polished unpolished, because it was the first time I'd had to pad for that long.
You know, we've continued to ask those questions because we know many of the folks who will watch or listen to this have picked up on, and what, you know, Chantelle started with is we're all going to do it. Like, you don't know what it's going to be, but that's the beauty of this profession, is just to engage it when it happens and take it from there. And certainly some of them are more serious than others, and there's lots of ways that that can come out. But we've enjoyed that along the way as part of these conversations, because I think that's all of these stories people can learn from. Yeah.
And it is inevitable. It will happen. It's exactly like you're a cyclist. There are only two types of cyclists, so the story goes. One that has fallen off their bike and one that is going to fall off their bike. There's two types of cyclists. It's the same. Something will happen. You will end up without a PowerPoint. You will end up with the speaker going down, the microphone, whatever's going to happen.
It's all going to happen.
And as long as you understand that it's not about that thing and it's about how you handle that thing that everyone will remember, then those things become way less fearful. The other part of that is, I think, is if you live in the moment, in the present, as these things are happening, and you're not worried about the future or the past, it becomes much easier to handle that mini challenge, that mini crisis in the moment.
So I'm curious, Gavin, you have described yourself as an accidental specialist in several fields. Does that relate to some of those stories in terms of business consulting and communication? And what does that mean for you?
You know, the funniest thing is I just referenced music. And so, yes, that absolutely relates to it in some way.
I suspected so.
Yeah. The reason why I use the phrase accidental specialist was because when I left high school, my marks were not fantastic. And I wasn't able to get into study anything that I actually wanted to study. So I ended up registering for something called production management. And believe me, it's as boring as it actually sounds. I was rescued by a phone call on the day of registration from the public relations department at Wits Technikon to say, we have an open slot. Would you like to come? That was accidental. And that literally is where my communication started. I didn't necessarily like the course, but it allowed me to become much better at communication, learn the basics. So that's where the accidental comes. The other accidentals all come from the fact that I love stuff. I love so much different stuff. It's one of what I would actually call a personality challenge. It's much better to stay focused on a single thing, but I've never really been able to do that because of brain chemical makeup. So I'm interested in a lot of different things. So I become an accidental specialist in, I don't know, music, for example. So at the moment, I really love K-pop. And I can tell you quite a lot about K-pop. Now, I shouldn't be able to because, hey, look at me. 55-year-old Westerner, what does he know about K-pop? But I had an interest before. We visited Seoul because our youngest daughter, Ariel, lives in Seoul. And so I now contextually have an interest in K-pop. And I can tell you a whole bunch of things about it. And we went to a K-pop shop in Myeongdong in Seoul. And those kind of accidental things relate to speaking because I know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it very deep, which is where I have deep interest in topics, but it allows me to be able to access so many different things when putting together talks, things that are in my brain and my mind that pop out and that are relevant, not only from a speaking perspective, but also in conversation, in business strategy sessions, etc.
Ingrid, you know, we've spoken about, or we've looked at Gavin's accidental sort of status, but if I look at what you bring to the table, you've got such a diversity of experience. You've got this media training, you've got this facilitation, you've clearly got a heart for women, you've got the TED Talks. Could you share with us a story that maybe led you down a, quote, accidental road, something you didn't plan by design, but a story that happened that shifted where you were headed in this journey?
I think the accidental knowledge comes from technical diving. So in the time that I was doing technical diving, which was 14 years ago, was our deepest dive, it wasn't something that I wanted to do when I was young. It was something that we agreed to, oh, yes, let's do this thing. And we both had different reasons for doing it. I wanted to dive with the Celia camps. I still do. I haven't yet, but that's off Sidwana Jessa Point. Gavin wanted to dive deep for wrecks and that kind of thing. The thing that I learned from technical diving, a bunch of things. In actual fact, I recently wrote a post about how many things I learned from technical diving that are relevant to both my life as well as to business. But I think the one thing that was really amazing, first of all, I got to see unconscious bias. Wow. As a woman in the technical diving space, it was absolutely incredible to see the bias of, oh, let me help you, my dear. Can I carry something for you? That kind of stuff. But then the thing that I really learned was around sufficiency and efficiency. So sufficiency is around not having too much stuff, but you have to have enough in order to have to do the dive and dive the dive properly. And then efficiency in terms of having the right gas, enough of the right gas, all those type of things. How I brought that back into my life, and specifically for the speakers that are listening to this podcast specifically, I think the most important thing is this sufficiency thing. We don't have a deck of slides on purpose. I mean, on just by mistake, just in case, right? There's no such thing. There's no space for just in case. There is carry what you need, have what you need. And then the other thing that I learned from that accidentally was that the ending is actually specifically in diving, because going down is not the problem. That's actually not where you need to worry. So your beginning and the middle is not it's the end, and whether you're actually at the top still alive. And it's the same at the top, right? So the people need to get something from it, remember you, and understand what it was that you're wanting to say. Yeah.
And then, of course, you need to be able to wrap up the talk in a way that people go, oh, I want more. Give me more.
Yes, yes. Chantelle, I have a question I'd like to add to that, and before we go to lightning round, and it picks up on this theme of connecting, right? So the beginning of that all the way up to the top. But we had another question around, you both work closely around join the dots. So how have you navigated the challenges of combining personal and professional relationships? And what advice would you give to others about working in partnership, right? There are all different types of partnerships and collaborations. Chantelle and I literally, we knew each other 2 months and said, let's do a podcast together. And now we're off to some other adventures. But what advice would you give?
I think the basis for us, because we've been working together since 1998, and we've been partners since 2001. The basis for us was the fact that we had a set of shared values. And I think that is really, really, really important. Our core values are around honesty, integrity, curiosity, continual learning, assuming the best of that person, trusting them implicitly. But are you talking about the assuming the best? Okay, talk to that.
2 TED Talks together. And when you do a TED Talk on your own, you absolutely can design it and put it together on your own. We are so different. And to actually agree on something for an 18-minute talk is so hard.
Challenging.
It is so challenging.
Because I'm right. You know,
you're wrong. That's a bad idea. So that I think was the biggest thing, a great example of assuming that we're both on the same side, and let me actually listen to what you have to say rather than just dismiss it. And I think the other thing that we've learned over time is that to speak up early and often, before the resentment comes in, before there is a snapping at one another. So Gavin, the perfect example, the other day said to me, do you know, I feel like I'm doing the dishes more than you doing the dishes. True story. And that's great, rather than a big blow up of,
let's share the response. Gavin, I feel like I'm doing the dishes more than you are. So, it's what do you do with these things? I think that the thing, Celina, in terms of these relationships is, yes, there are different types of partnerships. What is the partnership for? What is the purpose? What is the end result you're trying to achieve? Set some guidelines, boundaries around that partnership, and then agree on what you are going to do. Are you going to be honest all the time? Are you going to be honest even if it hurts? Because that is hard.
That's hard.
That degree of honesty can upset people. But then at the same time, how do you deliver that honesty? Are you going to be curious? So when you hear something that you think is the stupidest idea ever, are you going to turn around and go, that's a really interesting idea. Please share with me a little bit more about why you think that. And if you're going to phrase it in that way, then it brings a curiosity and a respect into the conversation with that person, regardless who the partnership is, that makes it not only functionable, but additive and worth continuing as a partnership. So I think we are a bit biased, though, because we've been around each other so much. It's 24/7. We've become very adept at using the tools, the inter and intrapersonal tools, and so I've just been told that I'm talking.
So we use time out as a trick and a tool all the time, and sometimes it really is irritating, but it is
like in that moment right there where she goes.
But time out.
I can tell you about the time. No, I can't. No, okay.
Time out really works because we're not going in the right way right now. Let's come back to this later.
Take a breath. Take a breath.
I love watching the two of you together. It is just such a joy. So I think as we're wrapping up, we've got 2 lightning round questions, and I'm going to fire the first one at Gavin, and Celina's going to fire the next one at Ingrid. Gavin, what is one question you wish we'd asked but haven't? What would be the question? What would be your answer?
I think it would be about what was the toughest part in writing my book, Swimming with Sharks, and the answer would be that I could have given up a lot earlier in the process when I got some serious feedback from an editor. When I was about 85% through the book, and that could have destroyed me. It stopped me doing anything on the book for 10 months because of how devastating that feedback felt. But that wasn't the point. The learning out of it for me was about how to take feedback and learning what to take on board and what to realize has nothing to do with you and has to do with that person and their perspective about their life and their perspective on your work. So what feedback is valid and what feedback is invalid.
Yeah. Thank you. So many things here to consider. Ingrid, my question for you is, if you could give one piece of advice to your earlier speaker self, what would it be?
My earlier speaker self wouldn't listen to me, but what I would give my advice would be stay involved. So as a young person, I did Toastmasters. I was 23 when I got my first competent Toastmasters certificate, but I never stayed involved. Being new members of VSAI now and being members of the Professional Speakers Association, I would tell myself to stay involved. The community, the support, you're not alone. There's people that can help you. I left Toastmasters thinking I knew it all because I was young, and I've only recently just come back. I should have been involved a lot longer.
Beautiful, beautiful point to absolutely end on. I love that. Like I said, I have so enjoyed interviewing both of you, and it's just been such a privilege to watch the banter, watch the timeout, watch the jokes. I've loved every minute of it. So thank you, thank you. Celina, as always, you know me. I look for a theme,
You
right?
do, and you're really good at it. So I leave it to you. That's how this partnership works.
I am seeing a walk the talk theme come out, and it's not just paying lip service to walking your talk. You know, there are so many speakers. The more I get involved and know people behind the scene that speak a message of, let's call it conflict resolution, but don't know how to resolve conflict when it comes down to it. And I really believe that as speakers, we need to be able to own our message. In other words, we need to be masters of. And I'm seeing such a walk the talk here. You not only speak about communication and that interpersonal dynamic, but you practice it, you live it. Your message is who you are. And I love that. So that's my theme for this
Oh,
episode.
it does. There's that authenticity that goes with it, that living of the values, and the fact that you're still learning, right? Even though you've mastered uh, certainly lots of that, and you're practicing it in all aspects of life, you're continuous learners, and that just absolutely shines through in this interview. Thank you both for taking the time with us to go on this adventure of a conversation to share your unpolished stories.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Our
Enjoyed it.
pleasure. To everybody listening, we can't wait to share this interview with you. And as always, please check out Virtual Speakers Association International. If you're not a member yet, take it from 4 right here that we absolutely encourage you to be involved, as you heard, within your home association and be available there, and then build out your global community and join us at VSAI. We can't wait to return again in the future with more unpolished stories. We are speaking beyond the spotlight. Take care and be well.